You wake up in the middle of the night with that knot in your chest. It's 3 a.m. and sleep has vanished. You stare at the dark ceiling of your bedroom and start crunching the numbers again. The numbers you've crunched 1,000 times. The car payment, the credit card bill, the mortgage, that loan you took out to help your son, and deep down, that nagging question. Will I be able to pay all this off before I can't work anymore? You're over 60. You've worked your whole life. You did everything right, or at least you tried. And now, when you should be enjoying your grandkids, traveling, relaxing, you're drowning in debt. Worse, everyone around you tells you the same thing. Pay off your debts as quickly as possible. Sell whatever you need to. Cut everything. Sacrifice your present to clear the past. And you believe it because it makes sense, doesn't it? Debt is bad. Debt is a burden. Debt is shameful. So you take every cent you have, every cent of your retirement, and you throw it at the debts. You deprive yourself of the basics. You don't go to the doctor because the money went to the bank. You don't buy the medicine because the payment was due. You live on the bare minimum while the bank gets the maximum. And here's what nobody tells you. You might be making the most dangerous financial mistake of your life, a mistake that could turn your final years into unnecessary hell. I know this sounds counterintuitive. I know it goes against everything you've been taught. But let me explain something I learned observing personal finance for over 70 years. Today, I'm going to show you why. If you're over 60 and in debt, paying off your debts at any cost might be the worst decision you'll ever make. And no, I'm not telling you to run from your responsibilities. I'm telling you something much more important. Something that can save not just your finances, but your life, literally. You see, most people treat debt like a moral issue, as if being in debt is a sin that needs to be atoned for immediately, no matter the cost. But debt isn't moral. Debt is math. And when you're over 60, the math changes completely. Let me tell you about a concept Wall Street knows very well, but that never reaches you. I call it the temporal horizon inversion. When you're young, you have something invaluable that no amount of money can buy. You have time. You have decades ahead of you to work, to earn, to build. So it makes perfect sense to sacrifice your present to secure your future. You cut expenses now to invest. You work hard now to reap later. You give up immediate pleasure for future security. This works because there's a later. But when you're past 60, especially if you're already retired or close to it, the equation flips. Your later is now. Your future is here. Every day ahead of you is no longer an investment. It's the return. It's time to harvest, not to plant. Now let me show you what happens when you don't understand this. I met a gentleman in Omaha. I'll call him Robert, 72 years old, retired. He received $500 a month. He owed $40,000 in his credit card and another $30,000 in a personal loan. Every month, he took $200 from his pension and threw it at his debts. That left him with $300 to live on. $300 for food, medicine, electricity, water, gas, everything. He ate rice and eggs every day. He stopped taking his blood pressure medication because he couldn't afford it. He stopped going to the doctor. He stopped seeing his grandkids because he didn't even have bus fare. He told me something I'll never forget. He said, "I need to pay off this debt before I die. I don't want to leave this for my kids." Sounds noble, doesn't it? Sounds responsible. But here's the brutal truth. With the interest he was paying, it would take 15 years to pay off that debt. 15 years. He was 72. Do you understand what that means? He was literally killing himself, depriving himself of food and medicine to pay a debt he likely would never have been able to fully repay anyway. And even if he had, what would he have gained? Another 15 years of suffering to die without owing anything. Meanwhile, life was passing him by. His grandkids were growing up. His health was deteriorating. Time, that resource that never returns, was being wasted. Why? Because of a misguided notion of financial responsibility. Because someone, somewhere, taught you that debt is the worst thing in the world and must be eliminated at any cost. But what if I told you that's wrong? What if I told you there's a hierarchy of priorities that, when you're over 60, places debt at the very bottom? You see, when you're young, the hierarchy looks something like this. First, you pay your basic bills. Second, you pay your debts. Third, you save. Fourth, you live. But when you're over 60 with a limited income, the hierarchy needs to be completely different. First, you ensure your immediate physical survival: food, medicine, basic shelter. Second, you preserve your minimal quality of life. The ability to see your grandkids, to have dignity, to not live in absolute deprivation. Third, you build a microscopic emergency fund, because emergencies happen, and if you have nothing saved, the next emergency becomes more debt. And only then, only after all of that, do you look at your debts. And here's the part that will shock you. Depending on your situation, the right answer might simply be to stop paying. I know what you're thinking. But Warren, that's irresponsible. That's immoral. I took on this debt. I have to pay it. And I completely understand that feeling. I respect it. But let me ask you a few questions. If you die of a stroke because you stopped taking your blood pressure medication to pay the bank, who wins? If you spend your final years eating poorly, living in deprivation, isolated from your family, all to pay off a debt you won't even finish paying anyway, is that responsibility or self-destruction? If your creditor is a bank with billions in profit, that has already provisioned your debt as a loss, that has insurance and structures to handle defaults, while you're a fixed-income retiree struggling to eat, where's the morality in killing yourself to pay? Now, before you think I'm encouraging you to simply ignore your obligations, let me be very clear about what I'm saying. I'm not telling you to spend irresponsibly and not pay. I'm not saying debt doesn't matter. I'm saying that when you have limited resources and limited time, you have to make choices. And the choice between your life and the bank's debt isn't a difficult choice. It's an obvious choice. But society has conditioned you to feel guilty about that obvious choice. It's conditioned you to believe you're a bad person if you don't pay. And banks love that conditioning. They invest millions in making you feel like your moral obligation to them is more important than your obligation to yourself. So here's what I learned. Debt is a financial contract, not a moral contract. It's a business transaction between two parties. When you took out that loan, the bank knew the risk. The bank knew there was a possibility you wouldn't pay. That's why they charge interest. The interest you've already paid for years, by the way. How many times have you paid the original loan amount just in interest? Think about it. That $10,000 loan that turned into $30,000. You've probably paid $15,000 in interest over the years. The bank has already profited from you a lot. And now, at this stage of your life, when you need resources the most, when your health is fragile, when every dollar counts, you're going to kill yourself to keep the bank rich? Where's the logic in that? Now let me show you the cold math of the situation. Let's take a real example. You're 65 years old. You receive $2,000 a month in retirement. You owe $50,000 in various debts. You pay $800 a month in minimum payments alone. That leaves $1,200 to live on. Now, you can do two things Option 1. You keep paying religiously. You live on $1,200 a month. You cut everything, no leisure, no private doctor, no extras. If all goes well, in 8 years you'll be debt-free. You'll be 73, debt-free, but also very likely with your health destroyed by 8 years of deprivation. Option 2, you stop paying the debts. You take that $800 and use it to live better. You go to the doctor. You buy quality food. You can see your grandkids. You have dignity. What happens? Your name goes on a credit watch list. Banks will call you. They'll send you letters. They'll try to negotiate. And you know what else? After a while, they'll offer massive discounts. That $50,000 debt, they'll accept 15, 10, sometimes 5. Why? Because for them, something is better than nothing, and they know you don't have anywhere else to get the money. They know that suing a low-income retiree isn't worth it, that seizing assets protected by law isn't possible, that garnishing retirement income has legal limits, so they'd rather accept whatever they can get. Now look at the math. In option 1, you paid $50,000, destroyed your health, and got rid of the debt. In option 2, you lived with dignity, preserved your health, and eventually paid $10,000 or $15,000 in a settlement. You saved $35,000 or $40,000, $35,000 that you used to live better for years. Which option makes more sense? And I need to pause here because I know what I'm saying is messing with deep-seated beliefs you've held for decades. So, I want you to do something with me now. If you're over 60 and sacrificing yourself to pay debts while your quality of life crumbles, if you're choosing the bank over your health, over your family, over your peace, I want you to write in the comments, "I choose my life now." It's not just for you. It's because hundreds, maybe thousands of other people watching this right now are in the exact same situation. And when you comment, when you publicly free yourself from this guilt, you give permission for others to do the same. You break this cycle of shame that banks use to keep you trapped. So go ahead, comment now. I choose my life now. I read every comment, and I guarantee you're not alone in this. Now let's go deeper, because there's another aspect of this that nobody tells you, the legal aspect. Most people have a huge fear of defaulting because they think they'll lose everything. They think the bank will take their house, take their retirement, leave them on the street. And this fear is deliberately fueled by creditors. But the legal reality in the U.S. is very different from what they make you believe. First thing, your primary residence is protected. This means if you live in your home and it's the only one you own, no bank can take it to pay off credit card debt or personal loans. It's the law. The only exception is if the debt was secured by the property itself, like a mortgage. Second thing, retirement income can be garnished, but there's a limit. At most 35% of the amount, and only if you're sued and lose, and only with a court order. It's not automatic. The bank doesn't decide. It's the court. And the court, in cases of low-income retirees, often doesn't even authorize it. Third thing, your essential belongings are protected. Refrigerator, stove, bed, clothes, the basic furniture in your home, none of that can be seized. Fourth thing, the bank has to sue you, win, get authorization for garnishment, and even then you have the right to defense at every step. This takes years during which you lived better with the money you would have thrown away. So what's the worst case real scenario? The worst case scenario is your credit score takes a hit and eventually a small percentage of your retirement income is garnished. It's not the end of the world. It's not the catastrophe they paint. Now compare that to the scenario you're living right now. You already have no credit anyway because you're maxed out on everything. You can't finance anything anymore. You're already living on the edge of survival. So tell me, what exactly are you protecting? Are you killing yourself to maintain a credit score that's useless to you? To maintain the possibility of taking out more loans that will sink you even further? Where's the logic in that? And there's more. There's something that conventional financial advisors will never tell you because it goes against everything they preach. When you're over 60, especially if you're over 70, your financial planning horizon is no longer decades. It's years, maybe just a few years. And I'm not being morbid or pessimistic. I'm being realistic. Statistically, a 70-year-old man in the U.S. has a life expectancy of about 12 more years, a woman 15 years. That's statistics, not a sentence, but it's the reality you need to consider. So when you're making a financial plan that sacrifices the next 8 years to pay off a debt, you're betting that you'll live beyond the average, that you'll have your health, that you'll be able to enjoy the years that are left afterwards. This is a risky bet, very risky. Meanwhile, you're wasting the years you have guaranteed now. The years when you're still healthy, when you can still play with your grandkids, when you can still travel, even if it's just to the next town over, when you can still live with dignity. Let me tell you about Alice, 74 years old. She owed $22,000. She was spending $600 a month just paying it off. She had a simple dream, to see the beach. She'd been born and raised inland, worked her whole life, and had never seen the ocean, never. 74 years old and never seen the ocean. She told me she was saving up to go, but she couldn't save a dime because every extra cent went to her debts. I asked her a question. Alice, if you stopped paying these debts for 6 months, could you save the money to go to the beach? She thought about it. Yes, she could. So I told her, go. Go see the ocean. The debt will be here when you get back. The ocean might not be. She went. She saw the ocean. She cried when she first put her feet in the water. 6 months later, she passed away. Heart attack. Sudden. If she had continued paying that debt religiously, she would have died without ever seeing the ocean. Think about it. She would have wasted her last months of life enriching a bank, giving up the only dream she had for an abstract notion of financial responsibility. And for what? To die with a clean slate, to leave less debt for no one to inherit anyway, because debt isn't inherited in the U.S. unless there's collateral? It makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. Now let's talk about the practicalities. Because I know you're thinking, okay, Warren, I get the philosophical point, but what about the practical side? How do I do this? First step, you need to do an honest assessment of your situation. Get a pen and paper, write down your monthly income, write down your absolute essential expenses. Food, medicine, housing, electricity, water, basic transportation, add them up. That's your survival line. Everything left above that line is your room to maneuver. Second step, look at your debts. Which ones are secured and which are unsecured? Secured is anything with collateral, a mortgage, a car loan. Those you need to be careful with because they can take the asset. Unsecured debts are credit cards, personal loans, overdrafts. Those are the first candidates to stop paying if necessary. Third step, prioritize secured debts if you want to keep the asset. If you need the car to live, pay the car. If the house is all you have, pay the house. But if you have a financed car that isn't essential, seriously consider giving the car back to the bank. A voluntary repossession to stop the bleeding at once. Fourth step, for unsecured debts, you have options. You can try to renegotiate, explaining your real situation. Many banks offer special conditions for retirees in difficulty. You can pay the bare minimum while preserving your quality of life, or you can simply stop paying and wait for settlement offers that will eventually come. Fifth step, and perhaps the most important, you build a microscopic emergency fund, even if it's $50 a month, even if it's $20, because the next emergency will come. A pipe will burst. You'll need medicine that insurance doesn't cover. There will be a funeral in the family, and if you have nothing saved, you'll have to resort to more debt. And then the cycle starts again, even worse. Sixth step, you protect your health above all else. Medicine isn't optional. Doctor's appointments aren't a luxury. Nutritious food isn't extravagance. These are investments in your survival. And survival comes before any debt, always. Seventh step, you recognize that your credit score, your clean record, all of that are tools. They are not goals. They are means to an end. And if these tools aren't serving you anymore, if you're not going to use credit anyway, then why kill yourself to maintain them? It's like polishing a car you'll never drive while you're starving. It makes no sense. Eighth step, you document everything. Every time a bank calls you, you write it down. Date, time, name of the person, what was said. If they threaten you with illegal things, and many do, you have proof. If they offer you a settlement, you ask for it in writing. You don't accept anything verbal. You protect yourself. Ninth step, you seek help if necessary. There are legal aid societies specializing in consumer defense. There are lawyers who work on cases of overwhelming debt. Consumer protection agencies have programs. You are not alone in this. You don't have to face the banks alone. And 10th step, you live. You make a point to live. You see your grandkids, you go for walks, you eat cake on your birthday, you allow yourself small joys. Because if you are saving every penny to pay debt while not living, you have already lost. The game is already over. You are merely existing, not living. Now, I need to make something very clear. I'm not saying this is the solution for everyone. There are situations where it makes sense to prioritize debt repayment if you're 62, healthy, still working, have a comfortable income, and can pay your debts without compromising your quality of life. Then pay. There's no problem with that. If you have a small debt that you can clear in 6 months without suffering, then clear it. No problem there either. If you have significant assets and the debt is jeopardizing those assets, then organize and pay. That makes sense. But if you're in Roberto's or Alice's situation, if you're literally killing yourself to pay, if you're giving up food and medicine and dignity, if you're wasting the few good years you have ahead of you, then you need to completely rethink your strategy. And you need to understand something fundamental. This is not defaulting. Defaulting is when you can pay and choose not to. This is insolvency. It's when you genuinely cannot afford to pay without destroying your life. They are completely different things. One is a moral issue. The other is a mathematical issue. And society, especially the society that programmed you from childhood to believe that debt is shameful, hasn't taught you to make that distinction. Now comes the part that will shake you, because I need to tell you something about banks that will completely change how you see this whole dynamic. Banks are not your friends. I know you know this intellectually, but emotionally, you still treat the bank as if it's a personal relationship, as if you owe loyalty, as if honor is at stake. But let me show you how the bank sees you. To the bank, you are a line on a spreadsheet. You are a number. You're either an asset that can perform or a liability that needs to be provisioned. When your debt goes into default, the bank doesn't get sad. The bank doesn't lose sleep. The bank has an entire department that deals with this every single day. They already expect a percentage of loans to go bad. That's why they charge everyone high interest. The interest you pay when you're on time subsidizes the losses from those who don't pay. You've already paid for other people's defaults over all the years you paid on time. Now, it's the system's turn to subsidize you. And there's more. When your debt becomes a loss for the bank, they deduct it from their income taxes. That's right. The bank writes off the loss and pays less tax. Who covers that loss? You, me, all of us through taxes. So the bank doesn't lose everything you owed. Not even close. Furthermore, many times the bank has already sold your debt. They packaged your debt with thousands of others, sold it to an investment fund, and already recovered some of the money. Whoever is collecting from you now is often not even the original bank. It's a credit recovery company that bought your debt for 5-10 cents on the dollar. For that company, anything you pay above that is pure profit. So when you're killing yourself to pay 100% of the debt, you're enriching someone who paid 10% for it. You're transferring your retirement, the sweat of your decades of work, to a speculator who bought your debt at a liquidation sale. Where's the morality in that? Where's the justice? And then there's the issue of interest. That loan you took out 10 years ago for $5,000 turned into $20,000. You've already paid $12,000 over those 10 years. You've paid more than double what you borrowed. The bank has already profited. They've profited immensely. And you still owe? How is that fair? How is that moral? But nobody tells you this. Nobody shows you this math. They just tell you you owe $20,000 and you need to pay. They don't show you that you've already paid $12,000 in predatory interest. They don't show you that, or that $20,000, $15,000 is compound interest on interest. They don't show you that if the interest were fair, you would have paid off that debt years ago. They just blame you. You spent too much. You're irresponsible. You need to pay, and you believe it. You carry that guilt. You sacrifice yourself because of that guilt. While the bank laughs all the way to record profits. Now let me tell you what happens in practice when you stop paying. First month, you breathe. You have $800 more. You buy real food. You get that medicine you were holding back on. You sleep a little better. Second month, the calls start every day, multiple times a day. You answer some, you explain your situation. They don't care. They have a script. They try to scare you. You hang up. You learn not to answer strange numbers. Third month, the letters start. Threats of lawsuits, notices of credit reporting, big scary words. You keep everything. You don't ignore it completely. You just don't panic. Fourth to sixth month, the calls decrease. The letters continue. Your name goes to the credit bureaus. You expected it. It doesn't change anything in your practical life because you didn't have credit anyway. Seventh month onwards, the offers start. First, timidly, I'll pay 50% and we'll settle. Then more aggressively, pay 30%, 20%, 10%. They want to recover something. You evaluate. If you manage to save some money during these months, if the offer is good enough, you negotiate. You ask for an even bigger discount. You close a deal. You pay 10 or 15% of the original amount. Your debt is gone, or you simply keep living, keep not paying, keep preserving your quality of life. And guess what? The world doesn't end. You don't go to jail. You don't end up on the streets. You just live with a bad credit score. And with $800 more per month to live with dignity, now I want to address the elephant in the room. The moral question. Because I know for many of you, especially those raised with strict values about honesty and responsibility, all of this sounds wrong. It sounds dishonest. And I completely understand. I deeply respect people who value honoring their word. But let me ask you some questions. Is it honest for a bank to charge 200, 300% interest per year? Is it honest to turn a $5,000 debt into $20,000 through compound interest? Is it honest to pursue a low-income retiree who clearly cannot afford to pay? Is it honest to use intimidation tactics, veiled threats, psychological pressure to extract money from vulnerable people? Is it honest to profit billions while millions go hungry, paying impossible debts? Where is the morality in this system? Why does the moral burden fall only on you, the weakest link in the chain, and never on the bank, the institution that created this game, knowing exactly how it works? The truth is, the current financial system is not based on morality. It's based on power. Whoever has power dictates the rules. Whoever has power forgives their own debts. How many times has the government forgiven bank debts? How many times have large corporations declared bankruptcy, wiped out their debts, and started over as if nothing happened? How many business owners do you know who have gone bankrupt, owed millions, and are now rich again? Because the system allows it for those who know how to play the rules. But when it's you, when it's the average worker, the retiree, the moral rule changes. Then you have to pay every last cent. Then you have to sacrifice yourself. Then you have to die with honor. But die. This is not morality. This is manipulation. Let me tell you about real morality. Morality is taking care of your health so you don't become a burden to your family. Morality is having dignity in your final years after working your whole life. Morality is being able to look your grandchildren in the eye without the shame of living in deprivation. Morality is recognizing that you are a human being with intrinsic value that doesn't diminish because you owe money. Morality is refusing to participate in a rigged game from the start. Morality is choosing your life over the bank's profit. And if someone judges you for that, let me tell you something. Those people aren't paying your bills. Those people aren't living your life. Those people won't be by your side when you're in the hospital because you didn't take your medicine. Their opinion isn't worth more than your survival. It never was. And you know what's interesting? The same society that judges you for not paying your debts applauds entrepreneurs who use strategic bankruptcy. The same society that demands morality from you turns a blind eye to mass tax evasion. The same society that condemns you for being behind on payments readily accepts that banks make billions by exploiting the poor. So don't let this social hypocrisy kill you, literally. Now, let's talk about your kids, because I know many of you are sacrificing yourselves to pay off these debts for your children. You don't want to leave debt for them. You don't want them to have to deal with it. And I understand that feeling, but here's the truth. Your kids don't inherit your debts, at least not in the U.S. When you die, your debts die with you, unless you've left behind assets. In that case, debts are paid from the estate's assets before any inheritance is distributed. But if you have no assets, if everything you have is legally protected, your debts simply disappear. Your children owe nothing. Zero. So you're killing yourself to pay for something that won't affect your children anyway. You're wasting your final years with them, unable to help them when they need it, unable to see your grandchildren grow up, all for a concern that doesn't apply. You know what your kids really want? They want you to be okay. They want to be able to visit you and see you smiling, not destroyed by worry. They want you to meet their kids. They want you to live your final years with dignity. No decent kid wants their parent to kill themselves paying off a bank. None. And if you have a child who would rather you pay the bank than take care of yourself, forgive my bluntness, but that child has a priority problem that isn't your responsibility to fix. So stop. Stop using your children as an excuse for your own financial martyrdom. Talk to them. Explain your situation. You'll see they'll support you. They'd rather have you alive and well with a tarnished name than dead with financial honor. And if they don't understand, if they pressure you to keep paying, then you need to have a very serious conversation about what truly matters in life. Because life matters. Your life matters. More than any debt. More than any number on a spreadsheet. More than any credit score. Your life. These days you have ahead of you, these mornings waking up, these calm cups of coffee, these conversations with your grandchildren, these small joys. That's what matters. That's what's real. The rest is paper. The rest is a social construct. The rest is an illusion you've been programmed to believe since you were little. And when you understand this, when you truly internalize it, you become free. You stop killing yourself for the bank. You stop living to pay. You start living to live. And then everything changes. Now let me give you a broader context. Because what I'm telling you isn't irresponsible. It's actually extremely responsible. It's recognizing the mathematical reality of your situation and acting accordingly. Do you know how many Americans are in debt? Over 70 million. Do you know how many are delinquent with overdue bills? Over 65 million. You are not alone. You are the majority. And this majority isn't delinquent because they're bad or irresponsible people. They're delinquent because the system is predatory, because the interest rates are abusive, because wages don't keep up with inflation, because a medical emergency can destroy years of financial planning, because the system was designed to create debt, not to help people prosper. And the banks know this. They count on it. Their business model depends on you always being in debt. That's why they offer easy credit. That's why they increase your limit when you're maxed out. That's why they call you offering a loan to pay off a loan. They want you trapped in the cycle because while you're trapped, you're paying interest, and interest is where they make money. A lot of money. So when you break free from this cycle, when you refuse to keep playing this game, you're not being irresponsible. You're liberating yourself. And freedom, true financial freedom for someone your age and in your situation, isn't about having a lot of money. It's about having enough to live with dignity without being chained to obligations you can't meet. It's about having peace. It's about sleeping without that tightness in your chest. It's about not being afraid to answer the phone. It's about being able to make your decisions based on what's best for you, not what the bank wants. That's the freedom that matters now. And you can have it. You can have it by consciously choosing to prioritize your life over debt, by consciously choosing to use your limited resources to live, not to pay, by consciously choosing to accept the consequences of that choice, which, as I've shown you, are not as catastrophic as they've made you believe. You can have this freedom today, now. You just need to give yourself permission. You need to forgive yourself for not being able to do the impossible. You need to recognize that you've worked your whole life. You've done your part, and now you deserve to live what's left with dignity. Even if it means leaving the bank unpaid, even if it means carrying a tarnished name, even if it means going against everything you've been taught, because what you were taught was wrong, or at least it doesn't apply to your situation now. The rules change when you reach your senior years with limited income. Priorities change and you need to change with them. You need to be flexible enough to abandon beliefs that no longer serve you. You need to be brave enough to choose yourself. And you need to be wise enough to understand that this isn't selfish, it's survival. And now let's recap everything we've discussed here. First, we understood that debt when you're over 60 isn't the same as debt when you're young. The time horizon has changed. Priorities have changed. The math has changed. Second, we saw that there's a hierarchy of priorities that places your survival and quality of life above paying debts. Food, medicine, dignity come first, always. Third, we demystified the legal fear. You won't lose everything. You won't end up on the street. Legal protections exist precisely to prevent that. Fourth, we exposed the reality of banks. They are not your friends. They are businesses that have already accounted for your potential default. You owe them no loyalty. Fifth, we showed that real morality lies in choosing your life, not in enriching a bank. Sixth, we clarified that your children do not inherit unsecured debts. You are not protecting anyone by killing yourself to pay. Seventh, we outlined practical steps. Assess your situation. Prioritize essentials. Consider stopping payments on unsecured debts. Build a minimal emergency fund. Protect your health above all else. And eighth, and most importantly, we recognize that you deserve to live the remaining years of your life with dignity. You've worked your whole life. You've done your part. Now, it's time to live. So, here's my final message to you. If you're over 60 and drowning in debt, if you're sacrificing to pay it off while your life falls apart, I want you to understand one thing. You have a choice. You always have. You can continue down the path you're on, paying religiously, destroying yourself, depriving yourself, reaching the end of your life exhausted, sick, but with a clean slate. Or you can choose another path. You can choose to stop, to assess, to prioritize yourself, to live the years you have with dignity, to accept the consequences which aren't as bad as they're made out to be, and finally, to breathe. No path is perfect. No path is easy. But one of these paths gives you life, and the other takes it away. You know which is which. You always have. You just needed permission. So here it is. I, someone who has spent a lifetime studying money, finance, investments, give you permission. Permission to choose you. Permission to prioritize your life over the bank's debt. Permission to live with dignity. You don't need my permission, of course, but if hearing it from someone helps, here it is. Choose to live. We'll sort out the rest later. Thanks for watching. If you've made it this far, you're exactly the kind of person I want in this channel. You're not looking for magic formulas or empty promises. You're looking for truth, real understanding, and the courage to make tough choices. That's rare, and I respect that immensely. Here on this channel, every week I bring you reflections like this. Reflections that go against common sense, that challenge what you've been taught, that show you the reality behind the financial illusions that govern most people's lives. It's not about getting rich. It never was. It's about understanding the forces that control your financial life. It's about making conscious choices based on reality, not social programming. It's about living with wisdom, not fear. If this resonates with you, if you want to continue this journey of real understanding, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. You'll become part of a community of people who think differently. People who have chosen to opt out of the financial matrix. People who value life over debt. And together, we'll keep exploring these truths that no one else has the courage to speak. I'll see you in the next video.